The night sky over Cairnfor burned with fire as if the stars themselves were dying. Long glowing trails marked the fall of destroyed ships. Some belonged to the Varian fleet, and others were something darker, something alive. On top of a tall tower deep within the jungle, Zelvari stood frozen, staring up with wide, fearful eyes. She was a high-ranking scientist of the Varian people, known for her knowledge and calm logic. But tonight, logic meant nothing. A shape moved through the clouds, larger than any ship, wings spread wide like a shadow covering the stars. It was a creature, ancient, unstoppable, known only by one name, the Apex. Its skin looked like black steel, shaped like armor. Its eyes burned red, and its body pulsed with deadly power. It was no legend. It was real, and it had come. No one controlled the Apex, not even the ones who first made it thousands of years ago. It destroyed planets, crushed fleets, and left nothing. Behind it was not an enemy you could fight. It was a force of nature. The Varans had studied it for generations, but never found a weakness, never even survived long enough to understand it. Now it had arrived on their moon, and nothing could stop it. Zelvari turned and screamed orders through her gums. "Evacuate! The Apex is here." The city below was in panic. Her people, tall and pale, ran through the jungle paths, trying to reach the escape ships. But they wouldn't make it. The Apex landed with the force of a meteor. The ground shook. The tower cracked. Fire spread across the jungle, trees turning to ash in seconds. Zelvari backed away from the window, heart pounding. This was the end. All their weapons, shields, knowledge, it meant nothing. The Apex had come to erase them, like it had erased so many others. And then, something impossible happened.
Ow!
A voice cut through the noise, deep and commanding. "That's enough." It was not loud because of volume, but because of presence. Everything stopped: the fire, the screams, even the Apex itself. Its wings folded in, its red eyes turned. It looked to the side, toward the tower. Zelvari followed its gaze, confused and shaking. And then she saw him. A figure stood on the back of the Apex. Not an alien, not a creature. A human. Man. He stood tall and calm, dressed in black armor with a helmet under one arm. His hair was short, dark, moved by the wind. His face was hard, but focused, marked with a scar above one brow. His other hand held tightly onto the thick plates on the creature's back, like it was a tame mount. He didn't scream. He didn't panic. It looked like he belonged there. Zelvari stared. Unable to speak, the Apex growled, low and deep, like a beast waiting for command. The man raised a hand and said, "Down." The Apex obeyed. It lowered its massive body with careful movement, not like a predator, but like a trained guardian. It sat in the burning jungle, silent now. Zelvari stepped closer to the edge of the tower, speechless. Her voice broke when she finally asked, Who are you?" The man looked up at her with eyes that had seen war, loss, and fire. "Commander Rourke," he said. "Earth Special Command." And then he jumped down from the creature's back, landing smoothly on the ground. His armor hissed with pressure. Release. He stood up, looked straight at her, and gave a small smile. Not cruel, not arrogant, just a calm smile. "Let's talk," he said. Zelvari couldn't answer. Her mind was still trying to understand. The Apex was real. It had arrived. It had landed, or what it had not killed. Not because it was tired, not because it had failed, but because it had listened. To a human, because a human had done the unthinkable. A human had tamed the galaxy's most feared monster. And now, everything had changed. 3 years before the Apex appeared on Cairnfor, Earth was under attack. The sky over the planet had turned red with fire as the Zalrex Empire, a cruel and powerful alien race, sent their war fleets to destroy humanity.
Zalrex.
The Zalrex were made of crystal and metal, their bodies sharp and strong, their minds cold. They didn't talk or warn. They just arrived and started wiping out cities. Earth's defenses, even with all its weapons and brave soldiers, were too weak. Oceans boiled under plasma bombs. Space stations were shattered like glass. The colonies on the Moon and Mars went silent, one by one. The rest of the galaxy didn't help. Other alien races watched from a distance, making speeches about peace, but offering no real aid. Earth was left alone to die, but humans are stubborn, and backed into a corner, they fight harder. Scientists and engineers gathered in secret places, digging through forgotten files and hidden technology. In the icy depths of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, a special team found something buried under the ice. It wasn't a ship. A weapon. It was something alive. Or something once alive. A giant body part beast, part machines, sleeping in a tomb of ancient ice. Its heart didn't beat. Its eyes didn't glow. But the shape of it sent fear into every man and woman who saw it. They called it a bio-interceptor. Some thought it was made by an ancient race. Others believed it had no maker, that it had always been. The leaders of Earth had one question. Could it be controlled? Project Apex was born. Top minds from every surviving country worked day and night. They tried machines, remote controls, chemical triggers. Nothing worked, till one man stepped forward. His name was Rourke. A war orphan, trained in every battlefield, every flight school, every special program Earth had left. He volunteered to try the neural link, the most dangerous method. It meant connecting his brain directly to the creature's mind. No one had ever done it. No one even knew what the Apex might do. But Rourke wasn't afraid. The experiment almost killed him. For hours, his body shook with pain. His eyes rolled back. The room filled with screams, his and something else's. Then it all went silent, and the Apex opened its eyes. Red lights, glowing hot, stared into the room. It rose slowly, steam hissing from its back. For a moment, everyone thought it would attack. But it didn't. It turned to Rourke and bowed. The link had worked. Rourke climbed onto its back, armor covered in ice and blood, and gave the first order: fly. The Apex leapt into space, breaking gravity like it was nothing. Together, Rourke and the creature struck back. First Zalrek's fleet that met them was destroyed in under 2 minutes. The second didn't last much longer. The Apex flew without ships, without engines. It was the ship. It ate power, broke through shields, and tore through enemy lines like lightning. Rourke rode it like a knight from ancient stories, guiding the rage of a god. Soon, Earth pushed the Zalreks back. The human fleet, fueled by hope, fought harder than ever before. Moon bases were retaken. Mars came back online. Space around Earth was cleared. The world had survived. And the man who saved it was no longer just a soldier. He was something more, but the other species in the galaxy didn't celebrate. They whispered in fear. The Apex had returned, and it had chosen a human. They said it was wrong, said Earth had broken ancient laws, that such a beast should never be awakened, should control that kind of power. Rourke didn't care. Earth had been left to burn. And strength was the only language the galaxy understood. The Apex wasn't a weapon anymore. It was something else. It had a mind of its own. It didn't obey machines. It obeyed only Rourke. And Rourke, though a man of war, was not a killer. Without reason, he knew what the Apex could do. He had seen it, felt it, and he carried that weight every day. So, when the fighting stopped, and the galaxy looked at Earth with fear instead of thanks, Rourke didn't ask for peace. He watched, he waited, and when the time came, he would protect his people again no matter what the Council said. Because Rourke didn't tame the Apex with chains or commands, he did it with pain, with loss, with the will to survive. And now, the most dangerous creature in the stars listened only to the voice of one human. The war had built a monster. But it had also built something even more terrifying. A bond. When the war was finally over and the fires of Earth had cooled, the Galactic Council called for a meeting not to honor the survivors, but to question them. The great alien races, seated in their shining halls above peaceful worlds, watched Earth's rise with uneasy eyes. They had seen what Rourke had done. They'd seen the Apex tear apart entire fleets and crush enemy worlds. But instead of respect, they felt fear. The Council, a group of powerful species who made rules for the galaxy, decided that Earth had gone too far. They claimed the Apex was a forbidden weapon, a living danger that should never have been used, no matter the reason. They said Earth had broken ancient laws by controlling it. They did not speak of how they had turned their backs during humanity's darkest hours. They did not mention how they had watched Earth burn and offered no help. All they saw now was a new threat they could not control. The Council's judgment came in the form of a demand. The Apex must be destroyed. Earth must disarm. The human race must surrender its most powerful asset or face punishment. The message was sent in cold words across the stars. The reply came quickly, and it was even colder. Commander Rourke stood before the Council's emissary through a galactic broadcast, his face calm, his voice steady. "We didn't build the Apex to conquer," he said. "We woke it because you left us to die." His message was short, but the meaning was clear. Earth would not bow. The Apex would not be destroyed. They would not be shamed for surviving. The Council responded with anger. Behind closed doors, they sent spies and assassins. Elite teams with cloaking suits and poisoned knives were sent to Earth stations. Ships with false flags tried to sabotage the Apex's containment zones, but they all failed. Apex sensed them before they got close. Rourke stopped the rest. He didn't speak again, just waited, and the galaxy began to tremble. Some of the Council feared another war. Others believed they could still stop Earth with words. So they changed their method. They chose not to send more weapons or warriors. Instead, they sent a scientist. Someone who had spent her life studying the Apex, its history, its myths. A voice of reason, not violence. Her name was Zelvari. She was from the Varian species, known for their logic and deep understanding of ancient life forms. Had written the most complete research on the Apex, though she had never seen it with her own eyes. She had never believed it could be tamed. And now she was being sent to meet the only man who had done it. Zelvari arrived on Charon 4, the moon selected for the meeting. It was remote, quiet, filled with dense jungles and strange wildlife. The Apex would feel at home there, and the Council believed a peaceful conversation could happen far from the watching eyes of the public. She came in a small silver shuttle, without guards, without weapons. She expected to find a base, a camp, some kind of military outpost. Instead, she saw burning ships falling from the sky. She saw clouds parting and the massive shape of the Apex landing through smoke and fire. The scene was like a nightmare, just like the stories told across the stars. She thought she would die. She thought it was already too late. But then came the moment that changed everything. She saw a human riding the creature. A man in dark armor, calm as if the world were not ending around him. A man who spoke just one word, and the monster obeyed. And in that instant, all her beliefs were shattered. Everything she thought she knew about the Apex, about humans, about power and control it, was all wrong. The Apex wasn't being used like a tool. It wasn't forced or chained. It was listening. Willingly. Zelvari realized she wasn't looking at a weapon anymore. She was looking at a bond. When she asked his name, the man replied, "Commander, Rourke, Earth Special Command." He jumped off the creature like it was nothing, landed on the ground beside the burning jungle, and asked to talk. She couldn't speak. She was trying to understand how such a terrifying beast could sit so calmly beside him. It's not like a killer, but like a protector. Her mission had changed in an instant. She hadn't come to study a monster. She had come to meet the only man. The galaxy feared more than the Apex itself. She had to ask the hardest question of all. What would Rourke do next? And more importantly, what would the Apex do if someone tried to take him away? As the Council watched from afar, waiting for news, Zelvari stood on the edge of history. The galaxy thought it knew who the monsters were. But now, for the first time, it had to ask, were they looking at a beast tamed by a man, or a man awakened by the beast? Zelvari followed Rourke deep into the wild heart of Charon 4. where thick vines hung like curtains between towering trees and strange animals moved in silence. The apex walked behind them, without making a sound, like a shadow made of living steel. Its wings were folded, but even in rest, its presence was terrifying. Zelvari had studied the apex for most of her life. She had read about its power, its destruction, its impossible biology. But nothing in her books or research had prepared her for the feeling of walking beside it. The air seemed heavier near it, charged with something ancient and wild. Rourke didn't seem to notice. He moved through the jungle with ease, one hand resting on his sidearm, the other brushing leaves out of the way. His face stayed calm, his eyes always watching like a soldier who had walked too many battlefields. Zelvari asked him questions, small ones at first. Where did he first find the apex? How did the connection begin? Rourke didn't speak much at first, but as the jungle opened into a wide, quiet clearing, he stopped and sat on a large fallen log. The apex lay down behind him like a giant resting dog, its massive body blending into the trees and shadows. Then Rourke started talking. Not like a hero telling war stories, but like a man finally letting someone see what he carried inside. He told her about Europa, about the project, about the neural link that nearly killed him. He spoke of pain, of the strange, endless dreams he shared with the apex once their minds connected. He spoke of loneliness, of being feared by his own people, even after he had saved them. He told her that the apex wasn't just a beast, it was awake. It was thinking, and it had known silence and hunger longer than stars had existed. It didn't follow commands like a robot. It followed him because he never tried to own it. Earned its trust, slowly, through shared rage and loss. Zelvari listened without interrupting. Her view of the apex began to shift. It was no longer a monster, and Rourke was no longer just a man with control. They were two wounded beings who had found each other in a universe full of betrayal. Before she could ask her next question, the jungle exploded with motion. Something massive dropped from the trees, a serpent of shadow, wrapped in black scales that swallowed light. A void beast, one of the old hunters from before the Council's time, sent by those who still wanted the apex destroyed. Its jaws opened wide, and fangs longer than ships flashed toward Rourke. He didn't flinch. Instead, he gave a sharp whistle, and the apex moved like lightning. Its wings snapped open with a sound like thunder. It slammed into the serpent midair, and the force shook the ground. The jungle became a battlefield. Zelvari fell to the ground and crawled behind the log, watching in awe. The serpent wrapped itself around the apex, trying to crush it. But the apex roared a sound so deep it made her bones tremble, and its armor glowed red. With one brutal twist, it broke free, grabbed the serpent with both claws, and smashed it against the earth. Light and energy sparked from their bodies as they tore at each other. The battle was quick but brutal. In the end, the void beast lay broken, steam rising from its body. The apex stood tall, blood and black fluid dripping from its claws, its chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Zelvari slowly stood up, heart still racing. She walked toward Rourke, who was brushing dust off his armor. She looked at the apex, still amazed it hadn't attacked her, then turned back to the man who had called it with a whistle. "You didn't tame it with chains," she said quietly. Rourke looked at the creature and nodded. "No," with trust. "It's that simple." Answer echoed in her mind. She realized then that what made Rourke so dangerous wasn't just that he had the apex, it was that the apex had chosen him. It saw something in him, something the Council never would. Not just strength or skill, but honesty, pain, and will. And in a galaxy filled with politics and fear, that made him more powerful than any fleet. Zelvari understood that Rourke wasn't leading a weapon. He was walking beside a legend. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten, that survival sometimes required the courage to bond with the unknown. True strength often came from the ones who were never meant to survive at all. Far across the stars, in the heart of the Galactic Council's great space station, the silence in the main chamber was cold and sharp. News had reached them. Zelvari had made contact. The apex was still alive, and worse, it was still under Human control. Some council members trembled in private, others shouted in fear. Debates turned to arguments, and arguments turned into panic. The council could no longer pretend this was a mystery or a myth. The apex was real, awake, and it had bonded with a human being who had no intention of giving it up. Air twisted their decisions. They saw Commander Rourke not as a survivor, but as a threat, a rebel with a godlike creature at his side. Didn't see the reasons Earth had for holding on to the apex. They saw only danger. So they gathered their ships. All of them. 500 vessels from across the galaxy, battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, energy bombers, even ancient weapons that had not been used in 1,000 years. Some were powered by stars, others by dark matter. It was the largest fleet assembled. Since the Council's founding, they sent a final message to Earth. It was short, cold, and cruel. Surrender the apex, or be erased. The message was broadcast on every human channel. Every soldier, every scientist, every child saw it. On a distant base near Saturn, Rourke stood silently as the message played. The officers nearby looked at him uncertain. No one knew what he would do. The apex stood just outside the base, massive wings folded, still as a mountain.
Ow.
Message ended. Rourke didn't yell. He didn't panic. He picked up a COM device and sent his answer. His voice was calm, and he spoke just 2 words. Come try. That was all. No speech, no warning, just a promise. News of the reply spread like fire. Across space, humans prepared for war. They had been outnumbered before, and they had survived. Now, they had the apex. Earth's fleet gathered smaller, yes, but sharper. Ships repaired from the last war. New fighters powered by alien tech recovered from the Zalrex. Commanders who had fought beside Rourke stepped forward again. No one asked him to lead, he just did. Didn't order the apex to fight, he asked. And the creature responded with a low roar that shook the base and cracked the ice beneath its feet. The location of the final battle was chosen carefully. The dying star system of Vernax, far from populated worlds where gravity pulled light into strange shapes and solar storms never ended, was a place made for war, where the sky itself seemed to scream. The Council's armada arrived first, lining up in perfect formation. Rows and rows of firepower, enough to destroy a dozen planets. They waited. Then Earth's fleet arrived, smaller, spread out, more like hunters than an army. And last of all came the apex, flying ahead of them like a shadow rising from a forgotten world. It didn't have engines or lights. It moved with pure force. Its wings stretched out, wide enough to cover a moon. Rourke stood on its back, armored and ready, his face calm as always. As the enemy ships locked weapons and charged their cores, there was a moment of silence, a heartbeat across space. In that breath before chaos, something strange happened. Zelvari appeared on the main council frequency. She had taken control of a captured cruiser and stood in its command deck, facing the cameras with no armor, no weapons, only her voice. She begged the council to stop. She told them what she had seen, what she had learned. That the apex was not a beast, but a being. That Rourke had not enslaved it, but earned its trust. That Earth had not become a threat, but had learned strength. Through pain, she told them this war would not save peace, would destroy it forever. The council didn't listen. They gave the command to fire, and Rourke, standing tall on the apex's back, whispered, "Let's show them." The stars exploded. As war began, and from the heart of fire the apex roared. The star Vernax burned like a dying heart in the center of the battlefield, casting red and gold light across the darkness of space as the 2 greatest forces in the galaxy clashed with terrifying power. The Galactic Council's fleet moved like a massive metal storm, 500 ships firing energy beams, plasma waves, and sun-splitter missiles that lit up the void like a second star. Earth's smaller force darted between blasts, faster and sharper, each ship fighting like it had nothing left to lose. In the middle of the chaos, like a myth brought to life, the apex soared with its wings stretched wide, carrying Commander Rourke straight into the jaws of destruction. Zelvari, on the bridge of the council cruiser she had captured, watched the battle through a cracked screen, her heart pounding with fear and awe. She had seen battles before, but nothing like this. This was not just war. This was a message written in fire and blood. Final answer to a galaxy that had judged without mercy. The apex moved through the enemy fleet like a blade through water, its body glowing with the energy of solar storms. Every time it opened its jaws, entire ships cracked apart. Its tail slammed into a dreadnought, sending debris spinning into the star's gravity. Rourke gave silent commands through his mind link, guiding the creature like a rider guides a trusted steed. But even the apex, mighty as it was, couldn't fight forever. The Council's weapons were built for one purpose: to destroy the unstoppable. It studied every known weakness, and now they aimed all their fire at one target: a massive dark matter cannon locked on from the rear line of the enemy formation. The shot tore across the battlefield like a scream, hitting the apex straight in the chest. The beast roared in pain, its armor cracking, fire spilling from its wounds. Rourke was thrown from its back, spinning into space, until he activated his suit's thrusters and managed to land on a nearby Earth ship. Inside the ship, medics rushed toward him, but Rourke shook them off. Blood trickled from his mouth, but his eyes stayed sharp. He looked out the window, saw the apex struggling, wings folding in, and clenched his fists. He knew it couldn't fall, not here, not like this. Overcomes, he ordered the remaining Earth ships to cover the creature. His squadron pilots, who had flown with him through the worst battles of the Zalrex War, followed without question. They formed a protective circle around the apex as it drifted, shielding it with their bodies and burning metal. But the Council pressed harder, sensing weakness. More ships poured in, weapons charged for the final blow. Zelveri couldn't watch anymore. She opened a channel, broadcasting to every ship, human and alien. Her voice broke through the noise. "Stop this. You're not saving the galaxy. You're destroying it. The apex is not our enemy. It was never meant to be a tool of war. It was meant to protect. And Rourke is not a tyrant. He's a man who chose to survive when you all chose to stay silent." Her voice cracked, not from fear, but from belief. "If you still have any sense of honor, any understanding of truth, then listen now. Stand down. End this." Some captains hesitated. Others ignored her. But one by one, a few ships pulled back. Then more. A group of alien fighters broke formation and turned off their weapons. A large cruiser powered down its engines. But many ships still fired, refusing to stop. And through the flames, Rourke made his decision. He stepped back into the airlock, sealed his helmet, and ordered his team to launch him back toward the apex. His body was bruised, his blood was cold, but his mind was clear. The apex needed him, and he needed it. As he flew across the battlefield, plasma flashing around him, the apex stirred. Its head rose. Its eyes, dim before, now burned brighter. It sensed him, felt him, with one great roar that shook even the heart of the dying star. It rose again. Rourke landed on its back, one hand gripping its armor, the other resting over the wound in its chest. "I'm here," he whispered. "Let's finish this." The apex responded with a roar that echoed across every frequency. And then it moved faster than anything should move. It dove into the enemy flagship formation, tearing through the core. Its wings slammed together, releasing a shockwave of burning gravity that crushed the dark matter cannon into pieces. Rourke pointed toward the Council's command ship, the heart of the fleet. The apex charged, engines roaring now with the fury of stars. Missiles fired, lasers rained down. But nothing stopped it, not this time. The apex crashed into the command ship with the force of 1,000 suns. The explosion that followed was seen from every corner of the battlefield. A flash of light that turned red, then gold, then white. Silence followed. Silence filled not with death, but with awe. And as the light faded, the apex hovered above the wreckage, scorched but alive, Rourke still standing on its back. The Council fleet, broken and stunned, had no choice but to retreat. The war had ended, and the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The battle over Vernax had ended in fire and silence, And now, across the galaxy, everyone was watching. The Council fleet was broken, scattered like dust across the dying star's light, while Earth's small, battered armada stood firm, surrounding. The apex like a loyal pack, guarding its leader. The apex itself floated above the wreckage of the Council's command ship, smoke and light still rising from its glowing wounds, but it did not fall. It stayed in the sky, proud and powerful. Its wings spread like a shield across the battlefield. On its back stood Rourke, bruised and bleeding, but unshaken. His armor was scorched and cracked, but his eyes held the same fire they had when he first mounted the creature. The galaxy had called him a threat, a danger, a man with too much power. But now they saw something else. They saw the truth. Zelvari had watched it all, her voice still echoing through the open comms. Her words had not stopped the battle, but they had planted doubt. And now, in the strange silence after victory, her message carried more weight than ever. She stood on the bridge of the captured cruiser, looking out at the apex, and whispered, "You changed everything, Rourke." Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of peace, but the start of something greater. On every planet, station, and starship, people replayed the footage. Children watched in awe as the apex soared through the fire. Soldiers from other species whispered in private about how a human stood against 500 ships and survived. Some were afraid, yes, but others felt something deeper. Respect, admiration, even the Council, though furious, could not erase what had happened. Their fleet was destroyed, their lies exposed, their power shaken. A vote was held in secret chambers, where the surviving leaders argued over what to do next. Some still wanted revenge. Others knew it was already too late. Back on Earth, crowds gathered under massive skyscreens to see Rourke's return. Apex landed just outside New Geneva, the new capital city rebuilt after the First War. It folded its wings and knelt like a loyal guardian. Rourke stepped down slowly, limping, his face tired but calm. The people cheered not for a weapon, but for a man who had stood when the rest of the galaxy turned its back. Children ran forward, and the apex watched them with strange, calm eyes. It didn't roar or snarl. It simply sat like it understood that the fight was over. Rourke gave a small wave to the crowd, then walked toward the press line. A reporter asked him the question everyone wanted to know. "Will you keep it?" Rourke looked at the apex, then at the sky. "It's not mine to keep," he said softly. "It's my partner. And we go where we're needed." His words were simple, but they struck deep. In that moment, people understood Rourke had not become a monster by controlling one. He had become a legend by walking beside it. The Council had tried to erase him, to wipe Earth's name from the stars. Instead, they had made him a symbol of survival, of strength, of defiance. Zelvari soon joined him, standing at his side as an ally and witness. Her own people questioned her loyalty, but she didn't flinch. She had seen truth with her own eyes, and she would not lie to protect the pride of powerful fools. She gave speeches. She wrote reports. In time, other scientists, diplomats, even council officers began to speak up. Slowly, the fear began to fade. Peace did not come quickly. There were threats. There were whispers of vengeance. But no one dared attack again, not while the apex still flew, not while Rourke still stood. The galaxy began to change not through war, but through the memory of what almost happened, and who had stopped it. Rourke never asked for a title, but people gave him one anyway. Some called him the Apex Knight, others the Voice of Fire, but he didn't care for names. All he cared about was keeping the balance. The apex, still mysterious, never spoke, never truly explained itself. But wherever Rourke went, it followed. And whenever danger returned, when pirates struck, when tyrants rose, when darkness gathered, Apex came like a falling star, and the fear returned, but not for humanity. For those who had forgotten what true strength looked like, because the galaxy had seen something it could never unsee, a human standing beside the galaxy's greatest. Predator, not as its master, but as its equal. And that image would live forever, burned into the stars.